race and, of course, the Belgian Tour and other races as well. But that's all we've kind of really put in time. But we might as well start with the Tour de Suisse because there were stages that happened before the incident as well. And I mean, yeah, what did you think of? Well, we can start with one of the positives. Biniam Girmay winning a stage coming back after his unlucky crash in the Tour of Flanders on his birthday. And yeah, do you think potentially he could be on for a stage win here as well?
Yeah, there were certainly some good performances through the week, despite the tragic news that came out of the Tour de Suisse. There was still things which went on, and Binny's thing, like you say, such a good thing that he came back from his setbacks. Do I think that he could win a stage of a tour? Yeah, I do think he could. He showed at the Tour de Suisse everybody a very clean set of heels. It was a pretty fair and square victory. It wasn't lucky, or it was definitely won by merit. He beat Wout van Aert, who he did launch early, like he was a bit out of position, but that's just the way it is in cycling sometimes. I do think maybe the first two stages might be a little bit too hard, especially when you consider like Van der Poel, who of course we'll get onto later, who's been at the Bauwels Belgium Tour just shredding it. Maybe stage one might be a little bit too far, but I certainly think there's stages which will suit Binny. We've talked a lot about Cav and stage 19, but I do think that looks like a stage which Binny could win. I think it depends. It's going to be those sort of what have been touted as kind of Michael Matthews or Peter Sagan stages from years gone by. Anyone's of those stages, I do think that Binny could win, and I think that Intermarché should be very rallied around him as probably their main man, as to realistically win a stage, because no offense to the rest of the Intermarché team, I just think that Binny is their most likely candidate. So I do think that he could win a stage, absolutely.
Thinking about Biniam Girmay, that really was a standout performance over the first couple of stages, because over maybe the past couple of weeks, we're missing that Brussels Cycling Classic, missing the mark, as well as sort of some of these early season races as well. There are a couple stages of the Tour de France that you could definitely flag up that could suit Biniam Girmay. I think the opening stage might be a bit tough, but I'm really liking the look of the finish to Limoges in the opening week of racing. There's a bit of a sort of a false flat kicker towards the end. That's where Marcel Kittel actually took a stage win back in 2016, it was. In a photo finish with Brian Cocard. I think with that like uphill finale, he could have an edge over Jasper Philipsen or maybe Fabio Jakobsen in that final dash to the line. So I think it could definitely be within his realm to win a stage, and I believe Intermarché should go all hands on deck for him. They've got a really solid team. We saw that Mike Turnison, for instance, took a stage win the other week. We've got Taco van der Hoorn and so forth. A lot of these engines coming in support of Biniam Girmay. It could be quite a fruitful Tour de France. I think a green jersey might be a bridge too far, but winning a stage is his goal. He's actually been saying it in sort of interviews and press releases as well. He wants to win that stage, and I think Biniam Girmay is really believing in that.
I mean, we might as well hear what the man himself thought when I asked him the question.
What do you think of the Tour de France route in 2023?
It was quite interesting. I mean, there is 5-6 stages they really suit me, and then also the flat sprint was something special to see in Tour, yeah, it's interesting, I think, this year to participate Tour.
If he does win, okay, there's two things. Louis Meintjes is always also coming top 10 last year at the Tour de France, arguably the best GC rider from Africa right now. But yeah, we've also got, well, you were saying that Fabio Jakobsen and all of these are the ones you needs to get rid of if it's a flat finish, so it probably is going to be more of an uphill. If he does win, I don't know if you saw the Tour de Suisse, when he won, they went crazy. And I think the Tour de Suisse officials weren't quite ready for the Bini Mania, and they jumped the barrier. No one, the poor press officer of Intermarché Circus, Sarah, she's very nice. She had to try and fend off some very big Eritrean men away from Bini. So imagine if he wins at the Tour. It's going to go crazy. Louis Meintjes, is that going to be a problem, you think? Or is he kind of self-sufficient? And the Tour de Suisse lead out, he kind of got lost from his lead out man. But I mean, it's better to make that mistake. We've been talking a lot about that. They didn't need to really forge this bond. Potentially, it will be fine.
I think it will be. Like you're saying, Mienkes is relatively self-sufficient. We saw that with Alpe d'Huez last year. I feel like that's more his kind of thing, is going to be mountain breakaways, and very Guillaume Martin in that sort of vein, is that you kind of drop out a GC, and I feel like that's his kind of thing. More than likely, I do see that Mienkes will be relatively self-sufficient in that, but there's also Zimmerman here, who of course won a stage for Dauphiné, but they also have Rui Costa, Lydian Calmejang, Kobe Kosens, people like that, who could very well support Mienkes in his mountain stuff, but they're crucially there to also make the hills hard for Bini so that they can get rid of the sprinters. Because you need the climbers there who can set that pace to drop a Jakobsen or a Philipsen and stuff like that. Because I do think that Bini is probably a better climber than Philipsen. I don't think, for example, stage 1 of the Giro last year, I don't think Philipsen would have competed in that, whereas Bini was up there. So that's kind of a comparison that I'm drawing. But I do think that, going back to what I was saying about Michael Matthews-esque stages, there aren't too many of them this year. It's worth noting there's not too many of those intermediate-y puncher finishes. They all come relatively kind of, basically the ones which are there, it's going to be like, well, Van der Poel, well, Alaphilippe, well, Pidcock, well, Wout van Aert. And it's going to be very difficult for Bini to win, I think. But that's not saying that he's out of the question. I think that he is very good, and he can certainly beat the best on his day. We've seen that time and time again, and I don't see why the Tour de France would be a hurdle too far.
Yeah, I mean, last year at the Giro, he was right up there with Mathieu van der Poel. He's looking excellent at the moment. You would assume maybe he could be doing the same thing here at the Tour de France on some of these like punchy finishes. That I always think Mathieu van der Poel maybe has an edge in those kind of finishes over the likes of Wout van Aert and so forth. I think he's the more reliable at these punchy finishes. Even now in Tour de Suisse, beating Wout van Aert, it's a sign of great things to come. He's now beaten Wout van Aert here at a World Tour race. He's beaten Mathieu at a Grand Tour. It's a good sort of morale boost for himself. Even he beat Christophe Laporte last year here to Wevelgem. Probably shows that he's now just building. He's got that morale boost of being one of the guys that can beat them on his best day. And with Wout's place and maybe Mathieu's place in the Tour de France squads in terms of their own sort of position, are they going for stages? Are they going for green? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? They might be in yellow. They might be defending. Biniam Girmay doesn't have these responsibilities. He could be sort of the wild card puncher in this year's Tour de France.
But yeah, we'll see what happens with Biniam Girmay. But